be in English, obviously, for those who, because we have a couple of people who joined through the call. So we'll continue in English, okay? But maybe we'll put in some Arabic words because the topic is quite interesting, and I think the only way I can explain it well, is that I would have to keep myself comfortable where I can mix some words, okay? There's a lot of people here who wants to know, how did I know that Agile is Muslim? I thought that it's quite a normal topic, but apparently it seems like a lot of people want to know, how did I know? So let me start by telling you a story, okay? So once upon a time, one day I went to the mosque and I saw a guy, a very handsome guy, beard, mashallah, منور كما يقولوا بالعربي. I asked him, who are you? Who do you think he was? Who do you think he was? Agile. That's how I knew he's Muslim. خلاص. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much all. This is how I knew Agile is Muslim. No, I'm kidding. So there is actually a thought that I had. I started experimenting on this thought. I started, sometimes you relate to things, and I didn't know about Agile before, by the way. So when I started in Rihal and I started understanding what is Agile and what does it mean, and that is quite different from what we normally do, things started relating, because it is something that we all feel in our day-to-day lives. But then when you start, putting the topic and you start structuring it, it becomes something that you can relate to, something that you can understand, and you are able to link things. So this is what actually happened to me, and this is how I came up with this topic, and how I think that actually Agile is Muslim. This is how I arrived to the idea. So welcome all to Rihal Talk, where it is, I think, the place where we will be sharing some interesting ideas, interesting stories. I think I'm the first host, but I think every month we would have a different host with different stories, and I'm really keen to really finish the topic, put the idea in this space, or what do they call the fighting pit, and we can all fight with each other to see whether it's true or not. Okay, so whoever, before we explain why Agile is Muslim, let me just first explain that there are many ways of managing a project, okay? So the most common ways, or the two ways that are well known, are Agile and Waterfall. Okay, for those who doesn't know what are we talking about at first. So let me introduce first of all Waterfall, because it's the easiest to understand. So Waterfall as a project management tool or a project management method is basically where you take a project, you break it down, and then you take a part of the project, you are done with it, you move to the second part. You're done with it, you move to the third part, and so on and so forth. And the reason why it's called waterfall is basically water does not flow backwards. So it just rolls and rolls and rolls and rolls until you're done. In Agile, just like the graph here, you can see that, can you see the difference? First and foremost, in the graph itself, you could already sense and feel the difference. Can you see here? You can come to this side.
You can move the TV.
I think maybe. Okay. So as you can see in the graph, it is something that is rolling, and this is why you would see there's a circle before it, and then the circle after it is because it is rolling. So the way you do things in Agile is you take parts of the project, and then you go into a circle, you do a mini project, and then once you are done, you move to the same steps, exactly the same steps, but with a different scope. So you keep on this circle until you are done with the project. So this is a quite very, very general idea about what is Agile. Obviously, there's a lot into it, but what we need to know in this context is this. Okay, so we know now that there is two ways, or mainly, or generally, there are two ways of managing a certain project. Okay. The second thing is, let's talk about Agile a little bit more so that we can start relating and you would maybe or hopefully see why Agile is Muslim. So we know that Agile is cycles. Goes on and on and on and on until you are done. Okay? Which is, by the way, is very fascinating. Whoever came up with Agile, it's a very fascinating way of doing things. Because sometimes, if I may just elaborate a little bit more, sometimes you face a problem that is quite complicated and your mind cannot grasp it or comprehend it. So what you need to do is you break it down a little bit and then you start taking chunks that you are able to deal with. So this is doing things in circle. Regular meetings, it requires regular meetings. Requires planning, obviously, as everything else. We need to plan for a sprint. You need to, oh, by the way, a circle, we call it a sprint, okay? So from now on, I'd be calling it a sprint. So you need to keep on planning or plan before you embark on a sprint. Produce artifacts. It usually produces a couple of artifacts. The important artifact that we would see here is the backlog, okay? It needs a Scrum Master. Can you tell me why it needs a Scrum Master? Whoever knows about Agile? Can someone explain what is a Scrum Master? Or the main objective of a Scrum Master? Yeah, go ahead, so that we don't waste time. Go ahead.
The Scrum is a methodology of Agile. It's one of the methodologies of Agile, the most famous one. And the reason you need a Scrum Master is because people tend to fall back into waterfall very easily.
So a Scrum Master is the police of, you could call it the police of Agile, correct? So it is the thing or the person that keeps you within these circle. Because as Azan said, usually if you don't have a Scrum Master, you would go back to waterfall as a nature. Another, I can add to that, if you are in a circle, you know the, في الملاهي we have that, what do they call it? Merry-go-round, for example, yeah? When you ride the merry-go-round, what do you feel? If you, yeah. Centripetal force. You feel like there's something pushing you outwards, correct? So if you don't have a Scrum Master, you would eventually fall out of the circle. So you need a Scrum Master, okay? And finally, every sprint has a fixed duration. It could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be expressed in hours, it could be expressed in whatever. But as long as every sprint is in the same size. Agreed? We have a quite good understanding of what is Agile. We have the main characteristics. Ready to link? Okay. Come aboard this train of thoughts. Okay? So the reason why I feel and I think and I'm quite sure that Agile is Muslim is because in Islam we have sprints as well. Okay? We have sprints. So as you can see here, or my audience, you can see in your screens that you have a daily sprint. Can someone explain or try to understand like how is the day a sprint in Islam? Salah? Nice. Nice. Okay, so I'm sensing that it's not only me. That's good. Okay, very good. Salah is the Scrum Master in your daily sprint in Islam. It's taking too long to show. Okay, so in Islam, if you noticed, every day you are going through the same thing, right? You are waking up in the Fajr, you are having Fajr prayers. Then after a while, you have Dhuhr prayers. And then after a while, you have Asr prayers. And after a while, Maghrib. And after that is Isha. And it is a daily sprint, right? So what you do is you go on your day, with your day, you are actually meeting the Scrum Master every day, which is Salah. And you are meeting him, in fact, 5 times a day. You don't seem convinced. Okay. Okay. What if I told you have a weekly sprint? Thank you very much. Oh, very nice. Okay. Salat al-Jum'ah, yes. Exactly. Can you explain?
Yeah, so like
one a week.
Once a week, exactly. So the sprint size is what? Sprint duration is a week. Very good. Who's the Scrum Master? I'll call it يوم الجمعة. Because يوم الجمعة is a يوم مبارك. So يوم الجمعة where you would come to your senses or you would come back to yourself, right? You would wake up. There's a couple of rituals that will bring you back to things. Because, you know, life is very fast. You keep on rolling in this merry-go-round and then all of a sudden you see yourself out of this loop. So there's things in Islam that keeps you within. And we have a daily sprint and we have a weekly sprint. And Salat al-Jum'ah is our weekly Scrum Master. The frequency is, the size is a week. The frequency is once a week. Khalas. I think you are getting the idea. That's very good, honestly. So yes, exactly. So we have, before we get into the yearly, there's actually a monthly sprint. Who is going to tell me who is the Scrum Master in the monthly sprint? We have a lot of people. I think it's not a very interesting if everyone knows everything. Okay, anyhow. So yes, exactly. ايش هو؟ ليالي البيض, exactly. So we have so أيام البيض or ليالي البيض is 3 days of the month, of the Hijri month, where you would fast. Okay? And apparently you don't have to, there's no specific days, but it is preferred that it is the 13th, 14th and 15th of the Hijri month, where you fast. And what a better way of controlling yourself than fasting, right? So it is something that you also, you would notice something, by the way, by the end of this, that the Scrum Master in the daily sprints is Salah. The Scrum Master in the weekly sprint is Yawm al-Jum'ah. The Scrum Master in the monthly is the fasting itself. Okay, is the fasting. Or Ayam al-Bid, which what you do in the Ayam al-Bid is you fast. Okay, so the frequency, you meet with this Scrum Master 3 days a month. Khalas. I think the one next to it is very obvious, correct? Okay. So we have a yearly sprint. And obviously, what a better time to mention this. Who is the Scrum Master here? Ramadan. Thank you very much. And,
Not only Ramadan.
Not only Ramadan. Tell me.
أعياد مثلا.
Yeah, you can, it depends on, coming to that. Okay. I think I paved the way for the understanding. I'm actually really happy. Honestly, I'm very happy. It seems like it's a natural idea. It's the only reason why you were able to anticipate what is coming up is because it's a natural idea. Okay, so for the sake of my efforts, let me continue. Okay, so we have the yearly sprint, and I would call Ramadan honestly the Scrum Master. And before we jump into the end of the presentation, which is sadly sooner than expected, because you already know the idea, is because Ramadan is a special one. And there is an understanding and a relation between all the sprints. So Ramadan is a full month. You have a yearly sprint. So obviously you would meet the Scrum Master for 1/12 of the time. So we'd meet with the Scrum Master for a full month. And this is very important, and I always thought of Ramadan like a tunnel in a roundabout. And just like the merry-go, if you are in a roundabout and you keep on circling that roundabout, you will eventually go to the outer lane. But if there is a tunnel in that roundabout, you would be forced to enter the tunnel back from the other end in the correct line. And this is to me Ramadan, honestly speaking. I always thought of Ramadan like that. It's a tunnel. You go into Ramadan. I'll talk about myself. The worst days in terms of diet is always just before Ramadan. The best days in terms of diet is immediately after Ramadan. After Ramadan, I'm going to change. And you start the first day and the second day, you come out of Ramadan with energy, and it is fine. You are in a circle. The further you get from Ramadan, the further the forces takes you out. But the moment Ramadan comes back in, you go back in, which is really beautiful, honestly. And let's look at the bigger picture now. As I said, the Scrum Master in the daily sprint is Salah, correct? The Scrum Master in the weekly sprint is also Yawm al-Jum'ah, which has Salah. But look at when things becomes a little bit more complicated. The monthly sprint is Ayam al-Bid, which is what we do is we fast. It's a little bit an intensive one. And by the way, you all know that in terms of fasting, what did Allah say in terms of fasting? What did Allah say in terms of ajr of fasting? Ajruhu ala Allah. Correct? So you would sense the importance of fasting, right? And then when it comes to the bigger cycle, the cycle that you might go into it, excuse me for saying, but maybe 60 or 70 or 80 or 100 times over your lifespan, it is what? Siyam. It is something that Allah Himself took it upon Himself to give you the ajr and thawab for, depending on your niyyah. So I think when we came and we discussed with the Sultan and the team about this, and I mentioned Ramadan, everyone felt like, oh, that's a good idea. Ramadan is coming up. It's very relevant. So yes, Ramadan is coming up and it's very relevant. And just like a normal sprint, you need planning. You need to meet the Scrum Master ready. You need to go there. You know it's a month. Make sure that you come back to yourself in that month. Before we end, there's one more cycle. There's one more sprint. And it's a sprint that you go through once in your lifetime. Hajj. Okay? So also in Hajj, the biggest circle of all, you would only meet this Scrum Master once or twice or thrice. It's very little. And it is Hajj. And you only have to do it once throughout your lifetime. So this is why I think Agile is Muslim, because actually this was there 1,400 years, almost 1,400 or more than 1,400 years back, and Scrum is relatively new. And I think we can add to Scrum from Islam itself. And I would add one thing here, since it seems like this was not enough for you to intrigue you because it is very obvious. I'll give you one more. Okay, so I think, in my opinion, the way we can even improve further Agile Scrum method, after looking at how things are in Islam, because to us Muslims, it is actually the go-to, right? We take things from the Quran, we take things from Al Hadith. We don't only take things that are related to Islam, we take scientific things, we take life lessons, we take more than just Islamic things, we take everything from our deen, correct? So let me take something from our deen and implement it in Agile, which is sprints within sprints. We usually do sprint after sprint. But sometimes the project is just too complicated to do only sprints. So why don't we do a sprint within a sprint? Or a sprint within a sprint within a sprint, depending on the size. So I would like to, introduce this idea, and I hope that maybe it's actually a good idea. It's definitely a good idea in Islam. So I'm sure that it is a good idea in Agile as well. And I think with this, I want to introduce this thought. We all know that there is a lot to be discovered in this world, correct? And try to think of it this way. There is a book, okay, which has everything, which is written by the all-knowing, which is, if you look at it from a scientific point of view, it will satisfy you. If you look at it from a social perspective, it will satisfy you. If you look at it from any perspective, trust me, any perspective, no matter who you are, no matter your interests, even if it is sport, I promise you it will satisfy you. And so, what I'm trying to say is, let us flip the equation. Instead of saying that, oh, this is mentioned in the Quran, after discovering it scientifically, why don't we flip the equation? We find it in the Quran and then we say it is discovered. Because there is still, I promise you, it's even said in the book, and I can't recall the ayah, but it's said in the book that there's a lot that you have not discovered yet. A lot. You might think that we are coming to the end of the era, for example, in terms of technology. You might think that we are coming to the end of the era when we look back at whatever, sports or whatever. But no. The Quran says that still there is more to know, and you have only scratched the surface. And so this is a motivation for us to look even further. Because I get this idea quite often that, back in the days, they did not even have, they had to open newspapers, and news did not travel as fast. And you need to go ask Fulan and Fulan for information. But nowadays, like that, you are getting it, correct? You feel like you're coming to, khalas, the end of the whole thing, but it's not true. This is just a false thought, and it is said in the Quran. And as I said, go back, whatever is your interest, you would find something that will satisfy you. Just like how we, found the whole sprints and agile thing, actually living it day to day, we could find even more. But maybe we took it for granted. So I would end my small thought, or I hope that you enjoyed this train of thoughts. And I would say that with a very simple statement, why do I think Agile is Muslim? It's not because I met him in the mosque, obviously. I think Agile is Muslim because Agile is sprints. Thank you very much. I would most definitely now would like to hear your thoughts. I have put this thought on the table. I think a lot of you agree with me, so I'm very happy with that. But I think we need to fight this idea. So go ahead. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. If you have any thoughts, any comments, any discussion, like anything, just throw it on the table. This is the second part of Rihal Talks. Okay. Abdullah? Also to my audience in Teams, if you have anything, I could.
Thank you, So I want to start the never-ending argument, which is better, agile or traditional project management.
Okay.
Because after I have seen, or after you enlighten us about Agile is Muslim, I can say the same about traditional as well. You start your day fresh, then you broke your day to pieces. You get to Salat al-Fajr, this is done. There's no go back. This is traditional. Next salat, next salat. Your day is done. Your project for daily is done. Can't we look at it from this perspective? So I want you to also ignite this perspective. Is Agile better than traditional, or the traditional is better?
Oof. I think this said a lot. Okay. I actually thought of it, and I was thinking that not only Agile is Muslim, but Waterfall is Muslim as well. But let me just elaborate, or maybe counteract with a different thought. Isn't sprints are actually mini projects? Small mini projects, right? And mini projects are waterfall projects. So if you look at it from a very small scale, it is actually a waterfall. It's true. But when you look at it from a bigger scale, it becomes a sprint, which is exactly the same way when it comes to project management. But since you brought this idea, and since I said that also waterfall is Muslim by the way. But I can't elaborate more because I need to do a couple of studies, but I have a single thought that makes me believe that also waterfall is Muslim. Waterfall is stages, correct? Every stage has its characteristics, advantage, disadvantage, the way you deal with that stage, exactly like life. Exactly like life. If you are smart, if you are smart enough, okay, you would figure that you are in a current stage, and you have that stage figured because you're living it. And you were in a stage before that, and you know it because you have already passed it. Figure out what is the upcoming stage, and try to understand its characteristics and how would you deal with it. Okay, this is looking forward. I'll give you an example, which is an example that most of us would go through. One day, I was Azab, bachelor, single, bachelor, okay? And I know life at one day, someday, I'll get married. That's a stage that I'll move to, just like a waterfall. I have jumped from one place to another. If you are smart enough, go and figure out what is that stage from the people who went through that stage. What does it need? It needs, obviously, you all know what it is. For example, financial stability, whatever it is, personal fixing, or whatever it is. You can implement the same idea also in your work or in a company, for example. So we know that a company goes through stages. You can even identify those stages. And if you know those stages and you name them, you can also start listing down their characteristics and you know how to deal with them. Like for example, it is something that I have realized when I got my first baby, son, okay? And my friend was actually going to have a daughter. And I told him, I was, we were discussing and all, and I all of a sudden told him that you would face this. We usually do that, right? When people are facing something that you have already faced, you give them advices, right? I started giving him advices, but then I started thinking that, oh, listen, guys, this is something that you would go through, just like how I did. So try to figure it out. I don't have to tell you how it is going to be. You can learn from me, but you can also figure it out yourself. Just like Islam, now I'm bringing the relation, just like Islam. And I was thinking also about, again, I'm sorry, I can't remember الآية, but أعتقد وخلقناكم علقة ثم يعني the different stages of a baby, and it is in Islam itself, like it is explaining it in stages and also telling you what each stage is. So it's exactly like that. Even if you take it a little bit a bigger scale, in life itself, there is ayahs that tells you that you start as an infant and then you become a youngster and then you become shab and then you become old, and it tells you being old, how is it and what would happen to you, right? So it is stages as well. So that's why I think Waterfall also is Muslim. Go ahead.
I have a question. Before I ask my question, thank you very much for the presentation. It was very enlightening. Coming from different backgrounds here, I've always found the business aspect quite fascinating, and indeed a very good time to talk about this, especially when Ramadan is coming. You've mentioned sprint within a sprint, sprintception.
Sprintception, exactly. Sprintception, yeah, exactly.
Can you give us an example of what is a sprint within a sprint?
Okay, I think it's quite interesting. So, just like our life, we live the bigger scale sprint, which is a one life sprint, meeting the Scrum Master Al-Hajj, and then we also at the same time simultaneously living the yearly sprint. Simultaneously, we are living the daily sprint, monthly sprint, the weekly sprint, and the daily sprint. Now, this is a lifetime project. So it needs those 5 levels. And I was thinking about the billing project. Sorry. I won't mention the client, but I was actually, because I relate to that project a lot because I learned a lot from that project. It is where we shifted from waterfall to agile, and I saw a lot of differences. But a big project like that, I was thinking once, actually it's during the time that I was developing this, the presentation, that what if we took it in a sprint within a sprint? There's a bigger sprint where you can define a scope and then you break it down even further. So whatever, for example, you would have an agile, a scrum master for the bigger sprint, someone who would take care of the bigger circle, who would talk in that level, progress would be expressed in that level.
So,
and
I will stop you there for a second, because actually this concept is there. I was looking for Ajmi, who is our Scrum Master. He's not here.
Okay.
So actually, in Agile Scrum, there is the concept of a sprint within a sprint.
Oh.
So a bigger sprint would normally be 2 to 4 months,
Mm.
and then the smaller sprints would be 2 to 4 weeks. That's how the concept works.
Here you
There
go.
are even, this is in gigantic projects. There are sprints within sprints
Within sprints,
so
yeah.
3 levels of sprint.
Mm.
I didn't see anything more than this, to be honest. But the sprints within a sprint is actually a very common practice.
Here you go. I thought it's a new thing. I thought I revolutionized sprint, but I think I need to do more of a study. But yeah, here you go. I mean, it's possible, But take it as an example. I didn't know about it. I extracted it from this, and apparently it's a practice. Okay. Other thoughts? Go ahead.
What if someone says, because this is the question that comes into my mind right now, the same can be applied to, I don't know the English term now, I don't want to call it, بس الديانات السماوية. نحن نشارك في كل أسبوع عنا بجمع السبت الأحد السنة في شيء. So can the same be applied or said about other religions?
Honestly speaking, like I think in order to tackle a very complicated situation, in my opinion, at this stage in my life, I feel like it's the way to go. And definitely life is a big project that is very complicated. And it came from the same source, correct? Those different religions as well, they came from the same source. And I think it's a rule of thumb. This is just a rule of thumb. And I guess the reason why all of you started figuring out things is because it's a rule of thumb. It is something that you go through every day in your life. Even if it is out of religion, like even if you're a normal person going about your life, you would still go into circles. Time takes you into circles. The watch itself is a circle. So you would still go into circles. So I guess it's definitely. Yeah. Please, more thoughts. One more, please. I like this. One more, please.
Maybe I'll just say that maybe it came naturally. People commented and participated and answered naturally. But to me, I think it enlightened the way we look at both at Agile and how our life actually as Muslims go. So I thank you for bringing that thought into our head. And also that I'm looking at it also from different aspects. So even if I put it, zakah is like
Most definitely, yes, exactly.
You can start relating to it, and then how that affects your overall life. Yeah.
Very true. Where you decide your own when is the meeting with the Agile with the Scrum Master.
But then you have zakah, which is you have to do it
Every
so
year.
if you plan it in that way, you can apply it in different aspects as well.
True.
And I have a much deeper thought.
Yalla, bismillah.
And I feel it's the evolution of human. It's from the beginning until religion started to come, until technology started to come. I believe that we started, and when humans started in general, it was all in stages, and we yearned to find the circles in our lives, which is why we started having weeks, having months, having years, just to find a pattern. Because having a pattern in your life helps you go on and move on. So I know that when it comes to merging between this and religion, it merges very nicely. But even in human life in general, why did we strive so much as humans to find this pattern?
A circle.
To find a month? Why did we have to define a month? It's because we want to see a pattern. We want to be able to not just go in a straight line, but be able to go back and then start again, and then start again. Whether it's weeks, whether it's the days is the easiest one because we see it it's very short term, but we are just yearning to find this long term, even in a bigger stage, in the decades, in the centuries.
True.
Just yearn to this pattern kind of thing. Maybe it's just a human nature.
True. It could be, yes, it could be. Because there was a day where there wasn't any months, and we found a month. We wanted to have something that goes on and on. True, very true. then I'm really sad it wasn't 15 days a week or 15 days a month. Thank you all. I really thank you for this. Honestly, I was keen to get to this stage of the discussion. I really hope that we could spend a little bit more, because these are the discussions that actually intrigues your mind. Thank you all, and I really hope that we could next time, Sultan, we need to spend more time, please. And also, maybe I suggest, from this, before we all dispatch, do you think if it is better if we have this talk somewhere in the afternoon where we can at least have it longer and we can discuss a little bit more?
No, this is too motivational to be
First thing in the morning, okay. Thank you very much all. Thank you.